ready. We'd all come to grips with the fact that it was over. I think everybody was sad to see it over.
Yes, I did sleep with the women that all of Hollywood regarded as icons. But what no one ever imagined is that every time the door closed, I found myself sinking into the darkest corner of my own heart. At the age of 81, Sam Elliott has finally broken the wall of silence he maintained for more than half a century. In the dim golden glow of his Malibu home, holding a glass of amber-colored whiskey in his hand, he confessed a secret that no one, not even his current wife, had ever heard. Behind the image of the quiet cowboy behind the proud mustache and the thunder-like voice was a man who had passed through the lives of 5 women who made all of Hollywood bow its head. One of them was the #1 sex symbol on the planet. Another was the woman whose picture America hung in nearly every bedroom of the 1970s. And one more was the blonde bombshell who once sent the press into a frenzy. Prepare yourself. Because what Sam Elliott is about to reveal is not only about love, but about desire, fear, loneliness, and the price a person must pay for choosing to live honestly in a Hollywood that prefers its lies to be painted beautifully. 1. Raquel Welch, the most seductive symbol on the planet, and also the greatest secret in Sam Elliott's life. In 1976, Sam Elliott was still nothing more than a faint name on a casting sheet, a supporting actor with few lines, a face people barely recognized, and a name even harder to remember. Meanwhile, Hollywood at that time was bowing to one name so powerful that hearing it alone was enough to silence an entire room, the world's #1 sex symbol, Raquel Welch. She had just become the center of attention after a series of films that drove half the world insane. The posters of her in that iconic fur outfit had practically become a religion for men of that era. Hollywood worshipped her like a goddess, the press chased her like a sacred relic, and fans looked at her as if she were an unattainable dream. But the moment Sam Elliott encountered her happened in a place that looked nothing like the glamorous images from those posters. It was a quiet night by the sea-cold wind sweeping through the worn-down streets of Venice Beach. A tiny bar with peeling walls and flickering neon lights. Sam sat alone drinking cheap beer, trying to forget his failure at a recent audition. The door opened, and Raquel walked in. Not the Raquel from magazine covers under perfect studio lighting. Not the goddess men whispered about before they fell asleep. But a tired woman wearing sunglasses late at night, trying to hide a sadness so deep that Sam could tell instantly she didn't want anyone to recognize her. She sat down next to him, completely by chance. A moment later, she tilted her head, offered him a cigarette, and asked, "Do you have a lighter? You're the only one here who isn't staring at me." That question made Sam freeze, not because she was Raquel Welch, but because of the sudden naked honesty in her voice. And that was the moment everything began. That accidental meeting at the bar turned into a silent agreement. Nothing spoken out loud, yet both understood it clearly. No reporters, no luxury hotels, no calls from PR teams. Just Sam, Raquel, and a connection that defied every form of logic. Raquel took Sam back to her house, a small home on a hill where the city lights below flickered like falling stars. On that very first night, Sam witnessed something the public would never believe Raquel Welch cooking. Wearing only his shirt, no makeup, no tight dresses, no lighting designed to highlight every curve. Just a woman smiling, turning a pan of eggs, asking Sam if he wanted a late-night dinner. That smile looked nothing like the ones she gave to cameras. Here, I'm not Raquel. I'm just a woman who needs to be loved. Sam never forgot that sentence. These were things that never appeared in any interview. During those nights, Raquel confided in Sam the loneliness behind the flashing cameras, the sacrifices required to hold onto a position everyone assumed was easy. The broken relationships she had never publicly admitted the cost she paid to become the woman the entire world desired. Sam recalled, "She told me things she had never said in any interview. She didn't talk to me as a symbol, she spoke from her heart. Those 3 weeks were intense and beautiful to the point of aching. But they had to end not because of betrayal, not because of boredom, but because of one cruel and simple truth. Raquel didn't need someone to love her. She needed someone to rescue her from the name Raquel Welch. And Sam was not that person. He was just an unknown actor, still struggling to stay upright in Hollywood. One night, as Sam was about to leave her house for an early shoot, Raquel blocked the door. She whispered, "You're going to leave me like the others, aren't you?" Sam didn't know what to say. He couldn't promise. He couldn't stay. He couldn't save her. They both understood. She stepped back, let out a soft laugh. A laugh Sam later said was the saddest he had ever heard. "All right. Then we end this before I pull you down with me. No tears, no anger. Just a woman too brilliant for anyone to fully hold on to, and a man not strong enough to stand beside a destiny-bound star like her." Raquel walked out of the room first without turning back. But Sam knew she was hurting, and Sam hurt too. Those 3 short weeks stayed with him like a scar, beautiful, sorrowful, and never fading. Years later, whenever Sam mentioned Raquel, his voice remained calm, but his eyes softened. "She was a secret I've kept until now, because I believe it was the only thing I could ever do for her, the most seductive symbol in the world." But to Sam Elliott, she was the woman who revealed a vulnerability no one else had ever seen. 2. Jane Fonda, the woman who once made Sam Elliott fear losing control. In the late 1960s, Sam Elliott was still just an unfamiliar face on film, sets a supporting actor with few lines and a name hardly anyone remembered. Meanwhile, Jane Fonda was stepping into the brightest chapter of her life. Barbarella had just been released, instantly turning her into a global sex symbol, the woman every man talked about and every magazine placed on its cover. But what made Hollywood both captivated by her and wary of her was not only her explosive beauty, it was the sharp, cool intellect of a woman who dared to challenge the entire United States during the anti-war movement. And that very woman was the one who left Sam Elliott frozen on the spot. The night they met was at a small backstage party where everyone was trying to appear more glamorous than they really were. Sam attended out of courtesy, standing quietly in a corner with a beer in hand, hoping no one would notice him. But Jane saw him. Her gaze swept across the room, filled with forced laughter, and stopped on Sam long enough for him to feel as if someone had gently squeezed his heart. Later, Sam recalled, "Her eyes made me stand still like a boy caught pretending to be strong." Jane walked toward him, not with the kind of steps that make men tremble, but with the stride of a woman who knows exactly what she wants and whom she chooses. She asked Sam why he was standing alone in the dark corner. Sam answered curtly, almost defensively, but Jane simply laughed. A sharp, knowing laugh that told Sam immediately she could see right through his hardened exterior, as if it were transparent. And what happened afterward changed Sam Elliott's life forever. Jane rented a small apartment, surprisingly modest for an international star. That was where they met, not a luxurious hotel or a hidden villa, but a humble apartment where Jane could shed every layer of her public image. There Sam saw a completely different Jane Fonda, barefoot hair, let down no cinematic makeup, no iconic persona, no poster girl, just a human being in need of a place to breathe. Their evenings always began with fiery political debates, which gradually dissolved into a raw desire both of them tried to hide but could never suppress. Jane was always the one in control, and that made Sam both confused and deeply drawn to her. Once, when Sam tried to hide his trembling and act tough, Jane placed her hand on his neck, looked straight into his eyes, and said, "You don't have to be a cowboy. Just be yourself." That sentence struck the softest part of a man, long known for his rugged exterior. Sam had always believed he was strong. Hollywood believed he was strong. The whole world believed he was strong. But Jane Fonda was the first woman to make him realize that true strength begins the moment you dare to admit that you too can be afraid. Those 5 short weeks were intense enough that Sam discovered a truth he had never dared to speak. Jane Fonda was too big for him, and he was far too afraid for her. At that time, Jane was preparing to step into the most explosive political phase of her life. She was on the verge of becoming the most controversial figure in America. Protests, interviews, the attacks from the press and politicians. Jane was about to walk straight into a storm, and the person standing beside her had to be strong enough not to be swept away. Sam wasn't strong enough, or more accurately, he didn't believe he was strong enough. Many years later, he said she walked into a war, and I was just a supporting actor trying to stay upright. Jane understood that. They didn't part because the love ended, not because of betrayal or heartbreak. They separated because they stood at 2 different elevations of life. Jane was preparing to soar into a political sky filled with thunder. while Sam was still learning how to stand firm in Hollywood. They said goodbye on a quiet afternoon, without arguments or tears. Jane simply touched Sam's hand and said, "One day, you'll realize you're stronger than you ever thought." Sam didn't believe her. Not until many years later, when his career finally flourished, did he grasp the full meaning of that sentence. Every time he spoke of Jane, Sam's voice softened to a near whisper. "She was the only woman who made me feel like I wasn't Sam Elliott on screen, but just a man trying to find his place within his own heart." 3. Farah Fawcett, the poster queen and the 6 hidden months beside Sam Elliott. In 1979, Sam Elliott was invited to a small charity event in Beverly Hills, the kind of event where unknown actors like him were only included to fill the room. Sam stood at the far end of the hall, avoiding bland conversations, when a sudden wave of noise erupted near the entrance. Farah Fawcett walked in, the woman whose smile alone could make all of America stop for a beat. The star of Charlie's Angels. The golden face on the red swimsuit poster that sold millions of copies. The embodiment of the perfection the entire world admired. She shone so brightly that the entire room seemed to glow more vividly. And Sam Elliott was just a supporting actor, trying his best to stay out of the way. Yet Farah's gaze swept across the room, moved past the major stars, and came to a stop on Sam. Not because he was remarkable, but because he was the only man not trying to stand out, not trying to impress, not looking at her with the possessive eyes shared by the others. That brief moment alone was enough to open a chapter Hollywood never knew about, and one Farah herself never acknowledged. That very night, Sam received an invitation to have coffee somewhere no one will know I'm there. Farah brought him to an hourly rental apartment in West Hollywood, discreet, small, and completely different from the luxurious image people assume she lived in. "When I'm here," she whispered as she closed the door, "I'm not Farah Fawcett. I'm just myself." And from that apartment began a secret 6-month relationship. No fancy restaurants, no hand-in-hand appearances on red carpets, no whispered sweet lines before cameras. Just nights spent dodging paparazzi by switching through 3 different cars, secret meetings on dark beaches, and real embraces. Farah never dared to give anyone beneath the stage lights. There were nights when Farah sat on the worn-out sofa, hair down, no makeup, staring at Sam with bare, aching eyes. That was the Farah the world had never seen. One evening, sitting on that same old couch in the rented apartment, no makeup, no styled hair, no lighting. She looked at Sam, her eyes fragile like an unhealed wound. Her voice trembled softly. "Everyone wants a piece of me, but no one wants me." Then Farah cried. Not a graceful, controlled cry, but a choking sob, as if the weight of America itself was pressing on her shoulders. She bit her lip, trying to breathe. "They love my hair. They love my body. They love my smile. But no one knows how lonely I really am." In that moment, Sam understood the most perfect symbol of America was also the most fragile woman he had ever held in his arms. 6 months together were so beautiful they felt almost unreal, but that very unreality made it impossible for them to go further. Farah Fawcett was the woman the entire world longed to touch. Sam Elliott was the man who only wanted to remain in the shadows. And from there, trouble began to form. Farah feared losing her image. If the press discovered she was secretly dating an unknown actor, the image of Farah Fawcett, America's superstar, would be damaged. Hollywood would never accept a goddess loving a man considered smaller, and Sam feared being crushed under the weight of her fame. He didn't want to become the man standing behind a spotlight so overwhelming it could suffocate him. In the end, they separated quietly. No arguments, no accusations, no attempts to hold on. Farah Fawcett was the most radiant woman Sam had ever been with, yet also the one who carried the deepest loneliness. They were simply 2 people standing in 2 worlds far too different. One world bathed in constant light, and one world that had no desire to be illuminated. 4. Cher, the goddess of the stage and the lone. Cowboy, drinking beer by himself. In the early 1980s, Hollywood was consumed by lavish parties pounding music, blazing neon lights, stars stepping out of glossy limousines. Everyone showed up to be seen, to be noticed, to be admired. Everyone except Sam Elliott. He hated places like that. He hated the way men bragged about their achievements. He hated the way women were treated like trophies. And most of all, he despised the thick layer of artificiality hanging in the air. At one such party, Sam slipped out to the balcony, sitting alone with a cheap beer, quietly watching the city lights stretching out below. The glass door behind him suddenly opened. Cher walked out. Not the fiery Cher of the stage hair, flowing glittering outfits, a voice like a storm. This Cher had a lost look in her eyes, her hand unconsciously gripping a small purse as if she were searching for a place where she could breathe. She glanced around, then looked directly at Sam. A tiny moment of hesitation. Just 1 second. Then she softly asked, her voice much smaller than anyone would ever expect from her, "Can I sit next to you?" Just like that, their story began. On paper, they had nothing in common. One was an untouchable diva. The other was a quiet cowboy who hated noise. But it was precisely their contrast that pulled them toward each other like opposite magnetic poles. On many nights afterward, they drove along the Pacific Coast Highway. Cher brushed her hair back, removed each piece of jewelry, shedding the layers of expectation the world had piled onto her. In the darkness, she was no longer a diva, no longer the legendary voice. She was simply Cher, a woman trying to figure out who she truly was. She stood at the edge of the shore, staring into the distance, her voice small like a lost child. "Do you think anyone could ever love the real me?" Sam didn't answer. He knew any words of comfort would sound hollow in the face of that kind of loneliness. So he just placed a hand on her back, light enough not to startle her, steady enough to let her know she wasn't completely alone. They met in hotels. No one paid attention to a vacant room hidden behind a parking lot. A small room overlooking the beach at midnight. Quiet knocks on the door to avoid being recognized. One night, with rain falling gently outside and the dark ocean glimmering below, Cher suddenly asked, "If I weren't famous, would you choose me?" The question sliced through the air. Sam froze. And that very moment of hesitation made Cher misunderstand. She spoke quickly, her voice trembling with fear and frustration. "I knew it. You like the quiet version of me. The version that doesn't have to face the whole world. But that's not me. I'm Cher. I can't leave that behind." Sam tried to explain that he loved her not because she was a diva, nor because she wasn't, but because she was the woman standing in front of him, full of cracks, yet full of courage. But Cher couldn't hear it. Not because she didn't want to, but because she had spent her whole life being loved for the versions of herself that men wanted her to be. Tears had begun falling without anyone noticing. Cher turned away, her voice breaking. "I've spent half my life proving I'm strong. I don't know what to do when someone sees me as weak." Sam reached out to pull her into his arms, but she stepped back slightly. That small distance was the first sign of the end. Cher understood that Sam didn't want to be dragged into her world, where everything was magnified, where even one embrace could turn into national gossip. Sam understood that Cher could never live quietly like he did. She needed the stage, the applause, to be the woman the whole world looked up to. They loved each other in the dark, but they belonged to two very different kinds of light. Those 3 months ended the way every Hollywood secret ends quietly, without a formal goodbye, just two life paths slowly separating. But in Sam's memory, Cher would forever be the woman who taught him that sometimes the strongest thing a person can do is to admit they're not as strong as everyone believes. 5. Jessica Lange, the woman who made. Sam reconsidered his entire craft. In 1983, Sam Elliott met Jessica Lange at a small film festival at the very moment she was at the peak of her career with Tootsie and Francis. At that time, Hollywood practically spoke her name in unison, the new genius of American cinema. Meanwhile, Sam was still just a familiar face. One of those faces people know they've seen somewhere, but can't quite remember from where. They happened to sit next to each other backstage before a screening. No camera flashes, no applause, just two strangers sharing an old wooden chair. Jessica spoke first, not with her usual charm, but with a question that stopped Sam in his tracks. "Do you ever feel like Hollywood is trying to mold you into someone you were never meant to be?" That question pierced straight into the deepest part of Sam, the man who had always believed that Hollywood had no place for someone too real. And from that moment on, the two of them were drawn to each other as if they were seeing their own reflections for the first time. Their relationship didn't grow in glamorous settings, but in strange, forgotten places, cheap roadside motels, dusty film sets in small towns, dingy bars where no one recognized them. Jessica was the perfect opposite of Sam, intelligent, fierce, emotionally charged, and impossible to predict. She refused to accept halfway emotions. Sam would later say, Jessica saw right through me. She pushed me to confront things I'd been avoiding my entire life. Their conversation stretched until daylight about art fear and what it meant to be human in an industry that treated people like merchandise. And through those nights, Sam came to understand that Jessica wasn't just looking for a man. She wanted a creative partner in the story of her own life. Their first real conflict didn't come from jealousy, but from the way they approached their craft. One evening in a motel room in Montana, Jessica was rehearsing for a demanding role. She asked Sam to run lines with her, pushing, pulling, breaking apart the psychology, the way she had learned from method acting. But Sam refused, almost snapping. "I don't act that way. I'm not turning my emotions into a laboratory experiment." Jessica lowered the script, stepped forward, and said quietly, "Sam, you're too strong for your own good. You lock everything away. This work requires you to open up." Sam turned away. He knew she was right, but he also knew he wasn't ready. That was the first night they stayed silent until morning. Their breakup began with a truth neither wanted to say out loud. Jessica was shooting toward the sky, and Sam only wanted to stay steady on solid ground. She was taking on major roles that shook audiences with their emotional depth. Sam, meanwhile, had just begun to find his place playing the quiet, stoic cowboy. And he feared that if he kept following Jessica, he'd be swept into an orbit that was too powerful, too bright, too overwhelming. One night in New York, after the premiere of one of Jessica's films, Sam stood in the shadows behind the theater and watched her walk across the red carpet with a radiant confidence that demanded attention. Jessica turned, saw him, and offered a soft, sad smile. "Maybe we were meant to meet, but not meant to walk the whole road together." Sam replied, "Only I don't want to walk behind you, but right now, I can't walk beside you either. No tears, no pleading." They shared one true embrace, the kind shared by two artists who understand that love can't always compete with the direction of one's life. Jessica continued toward the lights. Sam returned to his quieter path. Years later, he still spoke of Jessica with unmistakable respect. "She taught me how to dig deeper. She made me realize that acting isn't just about standing firm. Sometimes it's about allowing yourself to shake." Jessica Lange wasn't the longest love of his life, but she was the one who redefined Sam Elliott. And she was the woman who helped him understand that loving someone doesn't always mean you're meant to walk the same path, especially when two hearts are pulled toward two completely different skies. Among the 5 figures mentioned above, which one do you feel left the deepest impression on you? And in your opinion, who is truly the most compatible with Sam Elliott? Share your thoughts in the comment section below. And don't forget to hit like, share, and subscribe so you can continue joining us on this journey to uncover the secrets hidden behind the shimmering lights of Hollywood's golden age.